But the topic I've been asked to address this evening is cosmic reasons to believe in Christ. And this actually flows out of an internet debate I did with a couple of thousand atheists. I mean, you can do that in the 21st century. I could actually see them all on video. And it was a scientist in Ireland who said, I read one of your books, and she wasn't a believer. She says, I understand how you established deism, but how can you go from deism to theism to Jesus Christ, only looking at evidence from physics and astronomy? And I told her, well, I know 3 ways that can be done. I'm going to share one of those ways this evening. And the outline I'm going to do for this evening is first show you how we can look at the astronomical evidence to establish that there must be a causal agent beyond space and time that created the universe. And I use that phrase because once I gave a lecture at NASA Houston, and the director there said, this is a government lab, we're not going to let you use the word God, please take that out of your talk. And I said, well, I don't think government labs actually forbid the use of the word God. And he says, well, I do. And I said, well, how about if I use the phrase, the transcendent causal agent beyond space and time that created everything so that we human beings can exist? And he said, you can use that. But I'm also going to take you from how we can show from astronomy and physics that there's a transcendent God, a God that created space and time, to how that God can be personal and loving. Excuse me, let me bring this back for you. And then finally, why that personal God must be a redeeming God, a God who has a purpose in designing the universe so that billions of human beings can be delivered from the propensity to commit sin and evil and enter into a morally perfect relationship with the creator of the universe. Now, people say, well, where do you stand on the Myers-Briggs spectrum? And I'm an NERD. And like many nerds, I got into my subject matter at an early age. It was 7 years of age when I knew that my future would lie in astrophysics. I wanted to know why the stars were hot, and my parents said, we don't know, but you can go to the library. I did, and I came back with 5 books on physics and astronomy, and was bringing another 5 books home every weekend. And so that became my passion from the age of 7 onwards. And it was at age 7 that I read my first book on cosmology. That's the science of the origin and history of the universe. It was a book written by Sir Fred Hoyle. And I was not raised in a Christian home. I really didn't get to know a Christian well until I came to Caltech to do postdoctoral research. Christians are much harder to find in Canada than they are here in South Carolina. But as I read this book by Fred Hoyle, there were 2 chapters where he poured out all this anger he had towards Christianity and the Bible. I said, what's that got to do with a book that he had titled The Nature of the Universe? But he had a sentence in those 2 chapters, and I'm going to quote it for you. There's a good deal of cosmology in the Bible. It is a remarkable conception. Now, I kept that in my head, and I didn't really do a serious study of cosmology until I was 16. But that came about at 16. I realized the universe had a beginning. If the universe has a beginning, there's got to be a cosmic beginner. And so at age 16, I began to search for that cosmic beginner. And the first place I looked for him was in the books written by Immanuel Kant and René Descartes, and discovered they didn't have the right concepts of space and time. And so then I began to look at the holy books of the different world's religions, began with the Hindu Vedas, looked at the Quran, looked at Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, and I did finally pick up a Bible. And when I told you earlier, I didn't get to know Christians until I showed up at Caltech. I actually did see 2 Christians from 30 feet away when I was 11 years old. And these were 2 businessmen that came into our public school and put 2 boxes on our teacher's desk and left without saying a single word. But in those boxes were Gideon Bibles. And each of us took a Gideon Bible home. My Gideon Bible stayed on my bookshelf untouched for 6 years. So at age 17, I pulled that Gideon Bible down and began to go through it. And I realized what Fred Hoyle said what I read about him saying when I was 7 was true. Having looked at the Hindu Vedas, the Quran, the Buddhist commentaries, Zoroastrianism, Baha'i, etc., I discovered that the Bible says about 10 times as much about the origin and history of the universe as all the rest of the world's holy books combined. And what I want to share with you are the 4 features of the universe that the Bible teaches most specifically and repeatedly. And I think the first set is something that virtually all of you are aware of. In fact, I discovered no matter what country I speak in around the world, it seems like everybody knows one Bible verse. And it's not John 3:16, it's Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I remember reading that at age 17 and saying, what are these heavens and earth? And as I read through the rest of the Old Testament, I discovered you never see the word universe. But 9 times you see this phrase, the heavens and the earth. And those 9 passages read consistently imply that that means the entirety of physical reality. All matter, all energy, all space and time. Hebrews 11:3 states that the universe that we can detect did not come from that which we can detect. And we can detect matter, energy, space, and time. Now, I was reading the Bible at the same time that physicists in South Africa and Britain were developing the first of the space-time theorems. Today, we have over 30 different space-time theorems. In fact, I brought one of these space-time theorems with me for those of you who are interested in seeing what it looks like. I mean, this is a real page turner. I mean, if you love nonlinear differential calculus, you're not going to be able to put this thing down. But it ends with a paragraph that I will summarize for you, and it's something that you all can understand. What this particular space-time theorem proves is that any universe that expands on average throughout its history must have a space-time beginning, which implies there must be some causal agent beyond space and time, outside of space and time, who created our universe's space-time, matter, and energy. Now, the authors of this paper did find theorems that didn't have this causal agent, but these were all models of the universe where the universe does not expand throughout its history. And as I write here, only a universe that expands throughout its history will permit the existence of physical life. So the very fact that you're seated here tonight proves that there must be a causal agent beyond space and time that created our universe of matter, energy, space, and time. Now, one of the authors of this theorem, Alexander Vilenkin, himself not a believer, a year and a half after this theorem was published, wrote this in one of his books. He said, quote, "With the proof now in place," I'm going to move this microphone because we're getting some feedback from it. So if we can move that away, that would help. Thank you. He said, quote, "With the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning." And the problem he was referring to is that proof of a space-time beginning implies a causal agent beyond space and time who creates our universe of space-time, matter, and energy. So in just 4 minutes, we've gone through the first part of my 3-part outline. A transcendent God must exist. And this is widely conceded in the community of astronomers and physicists, including those who call themselves atheists. Now, they don't use the word God. What they say is, yes, there's some cause beyond the universe that creates our universe. So in that sense, when you're dealing with an astronomer or physicist who identifies himself as an atheist, if you press him, he or she is really a deist. They do believe there's an agent that creates matter, energy, space, and time. However, most of them are adamant that this agent is not a personal being, just simply an agent that creates all the physics, creates the universe, but not a personal being. So that's the question I next want to address. Is God personal, and did he design the universe and the earth so that we humans can exist within the universe? And step 3, can we actually show that it's a being intent on redeeming billions of human beings from sin and evil? Now, as much as the universe says about the beginning of the universe, it actually says more about the expansion of the universe. And this is evident in Bible translations that are not in English. Most English translations translate these 11 passages, for example, as a stretching out of the heavens, but the Hebrew verb natah means the expansion of what's being described. And what's interesting about these 11 texts, we see the Hebrew verb natah in all three Hebrew verb forms, which tells us that these texts are meant to be interpreted literally, that the universe really is continuously expanding from a space-time beginning. Now, I've written a whole book, The Creator and the Cosmos, which gives you the best evidence, the best scientific evidence, that indeed the Bible got it right when it talked about the expansion of the universe. And put this in historical context. No book outside of the Bible or a commentary in the Bible even hinted at an expanding universe until the 20th century. For thousands of years, the Bible stood alone as the only book stating we live in a universe that continuously expands from a space-time beginning. Now in the 21st century, we got overwhelming scientific evidence that that indeed is true. I don't have time to give you the best evidence, but I'll give you a visual demonstration. This is thanks to the Hubble Space Telescope. So over here, we've got an image of galaxies. Let me pull this back so those of you over there can actually see this a little better. Is that better for you? Okay, thank you. I can pull it back a little bit more. Okay, the image on the left shows you galaxies 12 billion light years away. And by the way, both of these images are to scale. The one on the right shows you galaxies 2 billion light years away. And what that means is here we're looking at galaxies 12 billion years ago, and on the right, galaxies 2 billion years ago. And both of these are to the same spatial scale. So what you notice as we go back 12 billion years, galaxies are jammed so tightly together, they're tearing spiral arms off one another. But as you move forward 10 billion years, the galaxies have now expanded apart from one another, where this phenomena is now extremely rare. And you can go on the NASA website and you'll see over a dozen different images similar to this one that will demonstrate for you the farther away you look, the more crowded together are the galaxies. Or to put it the other way, as we move forward in time, the galaxies continuously spread farther and farther apart from one another. Now there's 7 places in the Bible that it tells us that the laws of physics do not change. One of the more explicit texts is Jeremiah 33. And I'd recommend you read the whole chapter, because there God is talking to the Jews and saying, you change your mind all the time, but I'm a God that doesn't change. I never change. As proof that I don't change, look at the laws that govern the heavens and the earth. As they don't change, I don't change. And you see that brought out in more detail in the book of Ecclesiastes. Romans talks about this pervasive law of decay. If you read Ecclesiastes, it's telling us about that, one of the laws of physics. Everything is decaying. Everywhere you go in the universe, you see decay. Matter of fact, you look around in this room, you can see evidence of decay all around. If you look at videos of me when I was speaking 10 years ago, yeah, you can see evidence of ongoing decay. Everything decays. And it's Romans 8 that tells us that literally the entire universe is subject to this pervasive law of decay. Now, I was reading this at age 17 and said, this is Big Bang cosmology. The 4 fundamental principles of the Big Bang theory is that the universe has a beginning, a space-time beginning. The universe continuously expands from that space-time beginning under laws of physics that don't change, where one of those laws is a pervasive law of decay. And even if all you got under your belt is junior high physics, if you think back to that time, we were taught that any system that expands gets colder as it continues to expand. That's the principle of your automobile engine. When the piston chamber expands, the gasoline stops burning. Because it expands, the temperature goes down. If you've got a diesel engine, the piston chamber compresses, and without need of a spark plug, it compresses to such a degree it ignites the gasoline. That principle applies to the entire universe. which means as the universe expands from that space-time beginning, it gets progressively colder and colder and colder. And what I realized at age 17, it not only gets colder in a highly predictive way. If you know the age of the universe and you know the rate at which it expands, you get this biblically predicted cooling curve. That black curve you see there is the biblically predicted cooling of the temperature of the universe with respect to time. But notice I put 13 measurements. Those little red dots you see there are actual measurements we astronomers have made of the past temperature of the universe. The one in the middle is the most recent measurement and the most accurate measurement. I don't display the error bar because the error bar is actually thinner than the thickness of that black line, but it's perfectly right on top of that line. Basically showing you that thousands of years ago, the Bible predicted not only qualitatively that we live in a universe that gets colder and colder as it expands, but even quantitatively, where it actually predicts actual numbers that we can put to the test with measurements. Now, today we know the primary factor that causes the universe to continuously expand from its space-time beginning. It's something called dark energy. How many of you in this audience have ever heard of dark energy before? Wow, quite a few of you. Well, that's remarkable because it wasn't discovered until 1999. But we now know that dark energy is the dominant component of the universe. You say, well, what is it? It's not heat, it's not light. They call it dark energy because it emits no light or heat. It's energy that's embedded in the space surface of the universe. And the way it works is that space surface expands from the cosmic creation event. Dark energy becomes progressively more and more powerful in its capacity to accelerate the expansion of the universe. So one thing you can count on in 2020, the universe will expand faster than it did in 2019. And it causes everything to expand, including your own waistline. Your waistline expands at a faster and faster rate as you get older and older. However, you can only blame a little less than a quadrillionth of an inch per year on dark energy. If it's expanding at a greater amount, that has another cause. Okay. But this dark energy makes up 71% of all the stuff of the universe. And it's amazing to me as an astronomer that nobody knew about it until 1999. But it is difficult to detect. But we now recognize that it must be fine-tuned to an extraordinary degree. If dark energy were slightly stronger than what we observe, the universe would expand so rapidly from the cosmic creation event that gravity would not be able to collect any of the cosmic primordial gas and compress it into galaxies, stars, and planets. The universe would be forever nothing but dispersed gas, and life would be impossible. However, if we were to make the dark energy slightly weaker than what we observe, the universe would expand so slowly from the cosmic creation event that gravity would collect all of that primordial gas and collapse it into nothing but black holes and neutron stars, where the density would exceed 2 billion tons per level teaspoonful, a density so extreme that molecules are impossible, atoms are impossible, even protons and electrons are impossible, and of course life would be impossible. And it was about 15 years ago that astronomers calculated the degree to which dark energy must be fine-tuned to enable life to exist in the universe. And the answer is you have to fine-tune it to within 1 part in 10 to the 122nd power. 122 zeros after the 1. Now to put this in context, there's only 10 to the 79 particles in the universe. And so this is a number more expansive than that. And so what we've done at Reasons to Believe is to compare the level of fine-tuning design that we astronomers measure in dark energy to make life possible in this universe with a level of fine-tuning design that's the epitome of what we human beings have achieved in our inventiveness in engineering achievements. And physicists would agree with me that the epitome is LIGO. It's a gravity wave telescope that was built thanks to your tax dollars and also thanks to the incredible brilliance of a number of MIT and Caltech physicists. And it's an instrument that's so well designed that it can make measurements to 1/10 the diameter of a proton over a 4-kilometer baseline. And just a few years ago, they discovered gravity waves coming out of a merger of 2 black holes. In fact, we've now found 8 such events taking place thanks to this amazing instrument. But what it tells us, that the fine-tuning design that we see in dark energy, relative to what we see achieved by these MIT and Caltech physicists and your generous tax dollars, is that dark energy beats the epitome of human inventiveness and creativity by a factor of 10 to the 97 times. Which means that the one that designed dark energy so that life can exist in the universe, at a minimum, is 10 trillion times more intelligent and more knowledgeable than those Caltech and MIT physicists. Now, I've worked with these people. They're not dumb. They rank as some of the most best educated and brilliant people on the planet. But the one that designed dark energy is 10 to the 97 times more intelligent and more knowledgeable. Or I could put it another way, the one that designed dark energy so life can exist in the universe, at a minimum, is 10 to the 97 times better funded than the US government. Now, I think you can see where I'm going with this. We're no longer looking just at a transcendent causal agent. We're looking at a personal being, because only a personal being can manifest the attributes of intelligence, knowledge, creativity, and power, and evidently manifest it to a degree far, far beyond anything we human beings are capable of, or far, far beyond anything claimed in the non-biblical religions of the world. Now, you might anticipate that Hugh, the 21st century astronomer who's been a believer for 4 decades, would take this position. But interestingly, it's also a position being held by very well-known theoretical physicists who are atheists in their worldview perspective. Because I brought with me tonight another paper that I think you all need to read, written by 3 theoretical astrophysicists, all of them atheists, and the title of their paper is Disturbing Implications of a Cosmological Constant. Cosmological constant is another term for dark energy. And when this paper was published, it caught the attention of Philip Ball. You say, who's Philip Ball? Well, at that time, he was a senior physics editor for the British journal Nature, which ranks as the most prestigious science journal in the world. And when he saw this paper, he said, I got to interview these people. So he interviewed the 3 authors, and the interview is public domain. You can see it on Nature News website. I'm more than happy to give you the link. In fact, I think I got the link buried in here for you. But I'm going to give you a couple of quotes from that interview. And again, you can go to the URL and you'll see that. One quote was, arranging the cosmos as we think it is arranged, said the members of the team, would have required a miracle. And Philip Ball commented, that's a rather interesting statement coming from 3 people that identify themselves as atheists. But they went on to say this, an unknown agent, namely beyond space and time, intervened in the evolution, that is the history of the universe, for reasons of its own, which I think explains the title of the paper, Disturbing Implications. What they were basically saying in the paper is, if dark energy is real, then we have this agent beyond space and time performing miracles for reasons of his own. And that was so utterly disturbing to these 3 authors that they finished the paper with this final sentence. This is a direct quote, last sentence of the paper. Perhaps the only reasonable conclusion is we do not live in a world that is a universe with a true cosmological constant. In other words, dark energy can't possibly be real. But the irony of this paper is within 9 months after it was published, we astronomers came up with 9 independent observational demonstrations that not only is dark energy real, it's the dominant component of the universe. And I've written a short blog for lay readers on each one of these 9 observational demonstrations. Here's the list. I'm just simply giving you in the list what the observations are based on. Don't let that blow you away. The articles I wrote are accessible for lay people. And the URL for these 9 articles is there at the bottom. Matter of fact, if you go to that URL, you'll actually see that there are 25 observational demonstrations that dark energy is real and the dominant component of the universe. 9 a year after this paper was published, but today 25. Meaning there is no doubt that dark energy really does exist and is a dominant component of the universe, meaning that there's no longer any doubt that the one that created the universe is a personal being who created and designed the universe for our specific benefit. Now, this is not the only feature of the universe that shows this remarkable degree of fine-tuning design. It does rank as the most spectacular measurable evidence for fine-tuning design, but it's by no means the only one. And back in 1991, our scientific team went through a project of going through the scientific literature and documenting those features of the universe and the laws of physics that show a remarkable degree of fine-tuning design that exceeds what we human beings are capable of achieving. And back in 1991, we found 17. But what this table shows you as you go from 1991 to 1995 all the way up to 2020, the list continues to get longer and longer of features of the universe and the laws of physics that show this remarkable degree of fine-tuning design. Now, I commissioned this project basically to demonstrate a principle we see in Job and Psalms, namely that the more we learn about nature, the more evidence we will uncover for the supernatural handiwork of God. And so there's one way we're demonstrating this, that as time goes on, the list gets longer and longer as we learn more and more about the universe. And incidentally, this is also recognized by many astronomers and physicists who are not Christians. Here's a quote from the British physicist Paul Davies, where he writes, "The impression of design is overwhelming." Here he's referring to the impression of design in the universe that makes life possible is overwhelming. And just on February 1st, this is what, the 3rd or the 2nd? This is the 3rd, okay. 2 days ago, I put a post on my Facebook page where I give you a link to a debate I did with Paul Davies about 7 years ago. I did a debate with him on a British radio, and so you can go there and actually listen to an hour and 15-minute debate I had with Paul Davies. Most interesting part of the debate was our discussion on the value of a biblical testable creation model. But he comes from an agnostic worldview perspective. Now, he's not alone. In my office, I've got nearly 50 books written by astronomers and physicists, basically drawing the same conclusion of Paul Davies. And of those 50 books, only 2 of them are written by Christians. Both of them happen to be on our staff. But they differ from our books in that they talk about the design of the universe. They really don't get underneath the universe. And our perspective had reasons to believe if there's this personal God behind it, we're going to see design not on the level of just the universe as a whole, but on all size scales. And I documented this most completely in the 4th edition of The Creator and the Cosmos. Incidentally, I encourage you to get all 4 editions because also it makes the point. The more we learn about the universe, the more compelling becomes the scientific evidence for the Creator God of the Bible. But what we've done in this book in particular that's different from these other 50 books is we talk about not only how the universe must be designed to make life possible, but you also have to design the galaxy cluster. And we know of tens of thousands of galaxy clusters, but our local group is the only galaxy cluster that's got the features that would permit the existence of advanced light. We see that in no other galaxy cluster. And likewise, you not only have to fine-tune the galaxy cluster, you need to fine-tune the galaxy. How many have ever seen any one of those Star Wars movies? I'd be surprised if there's anybody who hasn't seen one. But when I saw the first one, it bothered me because the first thing you see when the movie starts is you get this little paragraph popping up that says a galaxy far, far away. Well, we astronomers have looked at galaxies far, far away, none of them have the features like our Milky Way galaxy that would permit the existence of advanced life. And I'm not too far from Hollywood. I know a lot of Hollywood screenwriters. I say, you guys have got to change the script. It can't be a galaxy far, far away. 200 different features of our Milky Way galaxy are fine-tuned to make possible the existence of advanced life. If I had time, I would show you images. I got this on another keynote. Images of the galaxies beyond our Milky Way galaxy that come the closest to matching our Milky Way galaxy. None of them have symmetrical spiral arms. That's unique to our Milky Way galaxy. None of them have that little central bar that has half the stars. None of them have a ratio of exotic dark matter to ordinary matter that's about 10 to 1. That's unique to our galaxy. The galaxy arms are spread significantly apart, and one of the special features is not a whole lot of spurs and feathers between the spiral arms. These are all features that must be fine-tuned to make advanced life possible. And then there's our star. For 60 years, astronomers have been trying to find another star that's sufficiently like our sun to be a candidate to have a planet orbiting it on which advanced life would be possible. During that 60-year search, they have found many stars that are twins of one another, but they've yet to find a true twin of the sun. The sun stands alone in all the stars in our galaxy and having the features that would make possible advanced life. Now, I remember back in 1995 when they found the first planet outside of our solar system, and my friends who were involved in this research said, we're going to find dozens, if not hundreds of planets that are going to be just like the planets in our solar system. Well, as of yesterday, the list stands at about 4,100 planets that have been discovered outside of our solar system. Not a single one is anything like any of the 8 planets in our solar system. Not one. And it led to an amazing discovery, namely that each of the 8 planets in our solar system must be fine-tuned to make advanced life possible on Earth. So when our family celebrates Thanksgiving, we not only thank God for the Earth, we thank God for Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Venus, Mercury, because every one of them must take on exactly the features that they possess to make possible advanced life here on planet Earth. I wrote all about that in my book, Improbable Planet. And over 400 different features of our planet Earth must be fine-tuned to make life possible. Today we're finding planets that are the same size as the Earth and the same temperature as the Earth relative to their host star. But what we're discovering is they got really thick atmospheres. 2,400 times as much nitrogen in our atmosphere, 1,200 times as much carbon, 500 to 1,000 times as much water. And they have to say, we need to follow the carbon, we need to follow the water. They need to be doing something opposite. We need to be looking for water-poor planets and carbon-poor planets. Too much carbon means the surface temperature will be blistering hot and life will be impossible. If you've got too much water, you're going to get another type of ice. Where you got really deep water, you get ice forming at the bottom that's denser than liquid water, and it creates an ice barrier between the water and the crust, which eliminates the possibility of life. We are living on a unique planet. And let's not forget about our moon. What's unique about our moon is how massive it is compared to the mass of its host planet. Yes, we see a couple of hundred moons elsewhere, but when you look at the ratio of the moon's mass to our planet's mass, it's 50 times bigger than any other known moon. And it takes that to stabilize our rotation axis tilt. And so the other planets in our solar system, their rotation axes do this. Ours stays nice and stable because we've got this single giant moon orbiting not too far away. And its tidal forces stabilize the tilt of our rotation axis, a crucial feature for life on planet Earth. It also slowed down our rotation rate to an optimal rate for human civilization. Now, we've done the same thing with these different size scale design features that we did with the universe. We started this project in 1995, basically examining the different features of our galaxy and our planetary system, our star, on our planet, that has to be fine-tuned to a remarkable degree to make possible the existence. In this case, we're not talking advanced life. We're talking what you need to get bacteria persisting on a planet for a long enough period of time, you can get something else besides bacteria. And what we see is back in 1995, we knew of 41 such features that had to be fine-tuned. And it indicated that the probability of finding one body in the entire observable universe that would have these 41 features, less than 1 chance in 10 to the 31st power. But as you can see from the list, as we learn more and more about galaxies and stars and planets and moons, we see that the probability of finding such a body becomes progressively more and more remote. In year 2006, we calculated the probability was less than 1 chance in 10 to the 556th power. And if you're talking plants and animals, the probability drops to less than 1 chance in 10 to the 1050th power. Now, to give you a visual demonstration of how remote that probability is, it's equivalent to the probability of someone winning the California lottery, which is the hardest lottery to win in any of the states in the US, the probability of winning the California lottery 150 consecutive times, where you buy 1 ticket each time. Or as a mathematician friend of mine said it, that's no different than the probability of winning the California lottery 150 consecutive times, where you don't buy any tickets at all. It's indistinguishable. But as you look at that last column, what you realize is that the probability of finding such a body anywhere in the universe without invoking divine miraculous interventions by the God of the Bible becomes more remote by a minimum of a factor of 1,000 times per month. So when I speak on a secular university campus to skeptics, I share with them, if you don't believe tonight, wait 1 month and see what happens. If the evidence becomes 1,000 times or more persuasive that the God of the Bible is responsible for this, you need to seriously consider the truth claims of Jesus Christ and the Bible on your life. Or as I share with Christians, where else can you get 1,000 times more evidence in just 30 days? And incidentally, it's on the conservative side, the average is more than 10,000. And explains why you get physicists such as Freeman Dyson making the following statement in his book, Disturbing the Universe, where he says, the more I examine the universe, the more evidence I find that the universe in some sense must have known we were coming. And the point he's making here is, we astronomers have no information on the present state of the universe. I tell my wife that because I'm an astronomer, I can't be held accountable for the present. All of my data comes from the past. And it's because of the velocity of light. I don't see the sun as it is now, I see it as it was 8 minutes ago, because that's how long it took the light to reach the telescope. And the farther away we look, the farther back in time. But what Freeman Dyson is pointing out, as we look back in time by looking farther and farther away, we can actually observe all the way back to 100 billionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second after the cosmic creation event, after the very beginning of space and time itself. In the 21st century, we got access to the entire history of the universe. But what Dyson's pointing out, as we look at that history, we see that progressively the universe is being step by step designed, year after year after year, for the entry of we human beings, 13.8 billion years after the cosmic creation event. So again, the whole point is, as you look at the scientific literature written by scholars who are not believers, they're making it clear, there is no doubt, there's a personal being behind this. And we see that the evidence for fine-tuning design goes up dramatically from bacteria to plants and animals, and the biggest jump is when you talk about what you need to get human beings. This is all documented in a 300-page compendium that's freely available at reasons.org/fine-tuning. There we give you all the evidences, and then we give you the citations to the scientific literature so you can check it out for yourself. And incidentally, a principle in science is the abstract to every research paper is freely available to the public. You might have to pay to get the whole paper, but the abstract's always free. Okay, but how do we go from a personal creator to a redeeming creator? Well, a couple of years ago, I was in the San Francisco airport waiting for my flight. And the flight got delayed, and it got delayed, and then they called my name. And I had a really cheap ticket. So I thought, I'm getting bumped. But the lady behind the counter said, "Are you traveling by yourself?" And I said, "Yes." She says, "We have a family that needs to sit together. Are you okay with us changing your seat?" I said, "You can put me anywhere you want in the airplane." Well, the ticket she gave me was for first class. So I said, "This is nice." So I sit in first class, and this gentleman sits down beside me, and very friendly, he introduces himself and says, "I'm from Germany, I'm a quantum physicist, I'm an atheist and a skeptic. Who are you?" And I found out later that that's not too atypical of German scholars. And I said, "Well, I'm not from Germany, I'm from Canada. I'm not a quantum physicist, I'm an astrophysicist. I'm not an atheist, I'm a Christian." He said, "This is going to be a really interesting flight." So for 2 hours, he peppered me with questions. But one of the questions he threw my way towards the end of the flight was this one. If there is a God that created the universe, why would a personal, loving God subject the universe and all of us to so much decay? And he was making the point I made earlier. The universe is subject to this pervasive law of decay. Now, I could have told him that this is stated in the Bible. I later did. But I first of all pointed out, well, you need this very high level of decay because stars cannot shine forth with the light and the heat that's necessary for life unless there's this very high level of decay in the universe. Moreover, we humans can't digest our food to do work unless we live in a universe with a very high level of decay. But it says, notice this, the rate of decay in the universe, as high as it is not so high as to discourage us from productive work. Yes, everything that we do in the way of our work decays over time, but it decays slowly enough that we still have a motivation to go to work every day and create what we want to create and put in the effort we need to sustain what we create. But yeah, it's all subject to decay. I recognize all the books I'm writing are going to decay away. They're not going to last. But they last long enough that I'm motivated. But it says, also notice this, the decay rate is not so low as to let sin and evil go unrestrained. He said, well, you got to unpackage that for me. And I says, well, if you actually read the 3rd chapter of the Bible, it talks about a time when the first humans, who were created in a morally perfect state, used their free will to rebel against God, and now they began to commit sin. But God told them in the garden, because of what's happened, now the more you sin, the more pain you're going to experience, the more work you're going to have to do, and as you see in the book of Ecclesiastes, the more time you're going to waste to undo the damage that your sin has caused. And none of us are biologically designed that we enjoy extra work, extra pain, and wasted time. And therefore, the laws of physics are actually motivating us to avoid sin and pursue a path of virtue. But as we do that, we discover we lack the resources to do what the laws of physics encourage us to do. That none of us has the capacity within to actually live a morally perfect life. And when we do sin, there are consequences. More pain, more work, more wasted time. Although I can share this as a parent, my sons were very clever at transferring the consequences to me and their mother. And so that's why you see in the Bible instructions, parents, discipline your children. Also you see commands in the Bible to government leaders, discipline your citizens, so those that are committing the sin and evil are the ones that are experiencing the extra pain, the extra work, and wasted time. That's kind of a fundamental principle of our justice system. We put people in prison, and these days it's mainly wasted time, but in the old days they also included extra pain and extra work. And yeah, that motivates people to avoid doing those things. But also, the fact that it's impossible for any of us to be morally perfect, it motivates us to say, well, in the universe, I see a God that's all powerful. I see a God that is all wise and all loving. Given the power and the wisdom and the love he has, he must be the one that's provided a way for me to do what I'm not able to do for myself. And that's the heart of the Christian message. That's where the Bible stands alone from all the other world's holy books, basically making the point that we are not able to do what our heart and mind tells us we need to do. We need God's help. But God says, if you come to me, I guarantee that you'll pass this test. I guarantee that you'll be able to trade your moral perfection for your moral imperfection for my moral perfection. That's basically what Jesus Christ did, the creator of the universe, when he came here to earth. He paid that redemptive price and made possible for each one of us to gain what were impossible for us to gain by our own effort. In other words, God designed the universe and all of its laws of physics, universe, earth, and earth's life, for the redemption not just of a few thousand human beings, but billions of human beings, and not in millions of years, but only thousands of years. Another thing that's unique about the Bible, this is what I shared with my quantum physicist friend on the airplane. If you compare what the Bible says with the non-biblical holy books, the Bible gives us a two creation model, not a one creation model where the creation is somehow restored, but it's a model where our present creation is replaced with a brand new creation, the new creation. But it doesn't happen until God eradicates evil and suffering once and for all. In fact, there's a promise in Romans 8:23. The moment the full number of humans that God planned from before the creation of the world, the universe, to be redeemed, is in fact redeemed, at that point, the universe will be replaced by a brand new realm. And in that realm, there's no gravity, there's no thermodynamics, there's no electromagnetism. None of those laws are necessary because there's no possibility for the existence of sin and evil. We get new laws of physics. And no longer are we going to be constrained to length, width, height, and time. We're going to be delivered to new dimensions. And these new dimensions and new laws of physics are going to make possible an expression and a reception of love and relationship that's beyond what any of us can think or imagine right now. Well, as we were ending that flight, the German quantum physicist said, I got a question for you. Why do you have such well-prepared answers to the 8 questions I threw at you in this flight? I said, well, you're not the only one I've met that's had those questions. I actually wrote a book on this, and by the way, your 8 questions are the chapter titles in the book. And he said, there's no way I believe that. Well, when I travel, I take a bunch of books with me that I give away to people. I had only one book left in my briefcase, but it was that book. It was this book, Why the Universe is the Way It Is. I gave it to him. He looked at the table of contents and says, you're right, those are my 8 questions right there. He says, moreover, they seem to be in order. So I gave him the book, and as he was exiting the plane, he says, do you have anything in German? I had one DVD left in my briefcase. It was a DVD, Journey Toward Creation, that we have in 11 languages, including German. I gave him that. As we were exiting the plane, he said, I've just calculated the probability that this conversation would happen. He says, it's less than 1 chance in 2 billion. And what I thought was particularly interesting, he said, I know what happened today was not an accident. I've had no further contact with that physicist. And incidentally, as you share your faith with people who are not yet believers, don't be surprised if you've got to wait a decade or 2 before you hear the results of what you've done. But I've been doing this long enough to tell you that literally every time I speak, somebody comes up and says, that book you wrote 25 years ago, that was a key factor in bringing my life around where I now became a follower of Jesus Christ. And you'll see more about this in the book, also Improbable Planet. But I want to end with this Bible verse. Psalm 97:6. The heavens proclaim his righteousness, and all peoples see his glory. There are many passages in the Bible that talk about how the universe reveals the glory and the power of God. But this passage makes the point, it also reveals his righteousness. And where you really see this played out is when you read the book of Job. As you go from chapter 7 of Job to chapter 19 of Job, Job basically cites the evidence of what he sees in nature and is able to conclude, I know that my Redeemer lives, and I'll see him in the last day. In my flesh I will see him. He was not only able to declare his relationship with Christ on the basis of the fact that he said, I'm not depending on my efforts, I'm depending on what my Redeemer will do for me. And was actually able to declare the assurance of salvation. What we stand for, Reasons to Believe, is that God has revealed himself through 2 books, the book of nature and the book of Scripture. And our mission is to use the book of nature to bring people to the book of Scripture into a relationship with Jesus Christ.